there I was. Guys, if you're ever going to tell a story about yourself and you start it and you're like, oh, dude, there was this one time. Oh, dude, one time this happened. Bro, I'm not listening to that story. If you start your story with, so there I was, I'm listening to the whole thing. I'm on the edge of my seat, dude. You're instantly a better storyteller with that. So their 17-year-old me was lying in my bed, so sad about this cruel world. And I don't think we're honest enough about this, and it's kind of becoming the epidemic of today. You know, everybody's depressed, everybody's anxious. I was no different. Little 17-year-old me. I was laying in bed and I was like, dude, I'm done. I'm done with this whole life thing. I'm done with mortality. Some people are living 80, 90 years. 17 years was enough for me, dude. I was over it. Which by the way, dude, I tell everybody even today, I'm like, dude, if it were up to me, if there was no penalty in just ending it all, I don't even know if I can talk about this on YouTube, which is crazy, dude. They're like, oh, let's help people with suicide prevention. Let's make sure, let's do our part in encouraging people to not take their own lives. But let's not let anyone talk about it. We want to stop. We want to decrease the number of suicides. We want people to stop killing themselves. Oh, but you can't talk about it. You can't even say those words on our platforms or whatever it is. I don't know if you can or can't, but here I am. Hopefully this goes on YouTube and it gets posted. But that's how I was. And again, even to this day, I tell people, I'm like, dude, if I could have it my way, if there was no penalty in taking your own life, I'd do it so fast. If I didn't believe that it was a sin and that it was like wrong to do, for me, that is. I know some people will be like, oh, triggered, dude, because we all know people that have taken their own lives, and I don't want to be irreverent about that. And I don't want to judge those people. That's the thing, is I'm not the judge. I'm not the judge. So we probably hear a lot that it's a sin to do that. But I don't know what people's circumstances are, dude. I don't know what's going through their brain. I don't know what they're experiencing. I don't know. We don't know. And so I don't know how God looks at it. But all I knew was that, at least all I felt that I was not going to be justified in doing that. So because that's the thing, dude. Today, I would say the same thing, not because I'm like extremely depressed and super anxious, and it's just because life is tough, dude. And I feel like we're not honest about that. We keep telling ourselves and telling each other, we're like, dude, life is so good. Life's great, dude. And either A, there's just something, there's something just wildly, something that I'm just not getting. or not seeing or not feeling, and everyone and all these other people are. But I feel like it's those same people that also get depressed and are anxious, and I don't know. I just don't feel like we're honest about it. Because the way that I see it is, I'm not saying that you can't experience joy in life. I'm not saying that life can't be good. I'm not saying that there aren't good parts of life, great parts even. I mean, just amazing, even things that may make all of it worth it to people. But that's the thing, is that you have to use the word worth it, because life is inherently bad. We live in a fallen world. As soon as Adam and Eve got kicked out of the Garden of Eden, as soon as they partook of the forbidden fruit, sadness and sorrow, those were the things that entered the world. That's what we have to live with. That's what we deal with. We're redeemed by Christ, but the world sucks, dude. We suck. The world is full, 100% full of imperfect people. How is that? The mathematical outcome of that is a sucky life. See, that's how it is it's just like inherently sucky, but through through the grace of God and through our certain actions, we can experience these joyful moments, and then once it's all over, see, that's where my thought really comes from. That's where my feelings really come from, is from what I've heard of the afterlife. It's just better. That's the thing, is like, I'm like, dude, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to be done with this whole mortality thing, not because I'm super depressed, but because all I've been told, all I've read about, is that the next one is just infinitely better. And so I say that to people, and people are like, "Oh no, dude, I'm worried about Kev. I'm worried about Kev, dude. He's talking about things that are sketchy." And I'm like, "I don't know, dude. And I was, because I'll get back to that. When I was, younger, I didn't have the understanding that I did now, but I still feel the same amount of like, dude, I'm ready to go. But I'm not gonna see. Back then, I was actually considering it, because I was like, you know what, dude, it's worth it. However sinful it is, or whatever penalty I'm going to receive from God, like, he's a merciful God. We'll work it out in the next one, and I'll be fine. I'll do whatever I have to do, dude. It doesn't matter what I have to do in the next life. I will do whatever it takes to maintain my salvation, or whatever it is. Go to heaven. See, that's where I think it stems from, is that I saw our 3-tiered heaven as most other people view it. Most other people outside the church, even maybe a lot of people inside the church, I looked at it the same way, which was incorrect. And so I thought I thought that there's, you got to do things to. That's how people. What I mean when I say that is, I think most people view it. At least what I've heard from people is like, oh, dude, you believe in your 3-tiered heaven, and you have obviously these 3 levels where it's your works that bump you up a tier, bump you up to the highest tier. What if you do enough good things? If you do X, Y, Z, then you move up a tier. And then if you do bad things, then you move down a tier. And I think that's how I viewed it. And that's why I was like, if I end my life, then I'm not even going to have any more time to repent on the earth. And then I'm like, that's going to be my final grade. That's going to be the last thing that I do with my mortal life, is sin. So I'm going to be, surely I'm not consigned to the to the celestial kingdom forever. And so I literally, my thought process was, you know what, dude, maybe I'll just live in the celestial kingdom and be happy about it. See, the reason I never did it was because I think my logical brain never, emotionally, I was just like, dude, I'm done with this. Like, it's worth it, dude. It's worth it to just be done with this. And my logical brain was like, no, dude. Whatever it is that you've got going here on Earth, it's not worth consigning you eternally to something you don't actually want. And regardless, I don't, I've achieved a better understanding since. But that's where the biggest conundrum came from. That's where my biggest contradiction. This episode is about my biggest issue with mainstream Christianity surrounding the doctrine. My biggest issue with mainstream Christianity doctrine. Because at that time I felt if it was that way, if we had to do things in order to earn our spots in these tiers, then again, that was going to be the last thing I would do, and I would be toast. Not hell. I wouldn't go to hell, but I wouldn't get to the celestial kingdom, and that's a huge bummer. Oh man, one time I had this lady. I was a missionary, obviously, and we knocked on this lady's door, and she started accusing us of, among many other things that were said, she was accusing us of not, believing that the Savior was the only way. She was like, you guys don't believe. She was like, we believe that Jesus is the only way to heaven. That you're not saved. You can't be saved unless, Jesus is the only way. And we were like, yeah, dude, we do too. And we were like, yeah, like no amount of our works. I don't know how many times I had to tell people. Dude, I don't know what people are watching or reading or what it is, but I'm like, dude, no amount of our works are going to get us to heaven. I don't know what YouTube videos we're watching, but like I can show you in the very Book of Mormon itself, several places that support that idea. That just very clearly, by the way. And she goes, well, then why do Mormons have such big families? And I was like, what? I didn't even know how to answer that question. I was like, are we still on the same topic? Like, why do Mormons have big families? What does that have to do? And she was under the impression that like having kids was like just bumped you up in the tier list. It was like for every, I think it was like an individual, like if you for every kid that you have, you're bumped up a notch until you're, and I was like, no, that's not a thing. I was like, I think the best answer that I mustered up was we believe that families are eternal, that we are families forever. And so I guess the more the merrier is the best answer I can come up with. why don't you ask the families with lots of kids? Not all of us belong to families with a bunch of kids. I mean, if you want to know why two parents decide to have multiple kids, like, go talk to them. I don't know. And I guess when you believe that families are eternal, that you're a family forever, or that you can be, that you would want to have more kids. I don't know. But whatever idea about like moving up to, it was just, that's just a guy, kind of give people an example of just one of so many things that I've heard that were just, I don't know. Maybe I haven't looked into that. And that was the other thing, dude. They always are like, oh, well, you don't know what you believe. Oh, well, I think you need to look into that a little bit more. And I'm like, dude, okay, maybe I do. I've only devoted my whole life to this for the last 2 years, but you probably know more about my religion than I do. And there are probably people that do. I didn't think she was one of them, but I'm not going to like sit here and act like I know the most about my own religion. Anyway, that idea put me between a rock and a hard place. Okay, I was like, mortality sucks, but I can't choose to leave it because that would also suck. And so then I got to asking myself, why did God even create me, dude? Knowing that this is how I would feel and this is where I would be, why did he even create me then? It's why, and then I got to asking myself, why did he create? See, because I'm like, dude, okay, maybe I'll go to the. I'm like, I'll just go to the celestial kingdom. I'll be happy. I'll be fine. It'll be great. I won't worry about it. It'll be worth not having to live here. And then I'm like, but there are people that are actually going to hell, as we understand it. By the way, how we understand hell, what we understand hell to be, is very different. According to my knowledge, than what most Christians believe it to be. We only believe that like a handful of people throughout the history of humankind are actually going to hell. You have to qualify to go to hell and then choose yourself to go to hell. Nobody gets consigned to go to hell. At least that's how I understand it. But even just those few people, I was like, why did God create them? Why did he create me? Why did he create them? If he knew, see, because he has foreknowledge. He knows the future. He knows right now where I'm going to end up. He knows right now where Judas was going to end up. He knows the future. So he's sitting there like, why is he creating people, dude? And somebody actually in my little Discord circle asked me that question the other day. I was like, dude, this kid's a thinker. Because that's a legit, like, that's a big philosophical dilemma. Why, if God knows where these people are going to end up, why did he create them? He's like, oh, yeah, well, I'm going to create them. I'm going to give them free agency, but I already know how they're going to use it, and they're going to be burning forever in a lake of fire and brimstone. I'm going to create them anyway? I feel like it would just be better to not create them at all. See, and again, since then, I have learned a lot, and it has made all the difference. But that was where my conundrum came from. That's where my philosophical contradiction came from. Because that's how I think. See, I found an answer. I found at least a sufficient answer. I still, we don't know everything about it still, but I know enough now to where it makes sense. And I found an answer in the doctrine of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, much like freaking every other question I've ever had. Have not, however, found an answer elsewhere. And here's the question. It's very long-winded. So, and I need to provide even more context. So here's what I believe. Here's what I understand. And I already know I'm going to get raked over the coals for this because there's things that I'm leaving out or just don't quite understand. But I also think that there's a lot of things that I have been told I don't understand, but then never actually got an explanation on it, which makes me think that nobody understands it because it's not understandable, because it's nonsense. So here's the thing. What I understand about mainstream Christianity is they believe that God has limitless power. We believe that he has all the power. We believe that he's omnipotent, that he has all power. There's a difference between those two things. Okay, if you have limitless power, it's pretty self-explanatory. They believe that God has a little further into that point, what limitless actually means. I'm going to try to paint the picture. They believe that God was not created. He just always existed as God. Okay, we believe that intelligence is eternal, that everybody has always existed, but just not didn't have our spirits, didn't have our bodies. But they believe that God has always been God, that there never was a time where God was not God, and that God is just like this amorphous, incorporeal, whiskey presence or thing or entity. We don't know. I haven't heard. We're just kind of like, so we just call it God, and we gave it a gender. It's him. I guess because he came down in the form of a man, but he's not actually a man, but he is. But he's also, I don't know, but he's eternal. That's not super the point, but the point is that he created, when they say, mainstream Christianity says that when he created everything, he created the universe, he literally created it out of nothing. We had God, nothing, and then God created something out of nothing. And that already, just mathematically, philosophically, every way that I have looked at that makes zero sense. That is an impossibility. Look, I'm all for believing things that there are things that God understands and God sees that is just way beyond our comprehension. But I believe but there are things that are within our comprehension. And that's kind of what I want to address in this episode. I think that there are things that we can understand that do not make sense with the incorrect doctrine. And instead of making it make sense, we just say, well, we can't understand that. And that's what I've been told is I'm like, dude, how do you get, when you have zero, When you have nothing, how do you get something? Think about that. Think about that for 2 seconds. You cannot. That doesn't make sense. Okay, I'm on board with the scientific approach that says that matter cannot be destroyed nor created. And when they say created, they're talking about just being spawned out of nothing. I can't even say thin air because air is something. and see, that's what we believe in the church. Our doctrine is that God created, he achieved godhood. He's an exalted man. And he created the universe. He created the earth by organizing it, taking matter that already existed, that is, it exists forever, and he organized it, which is what I have been told is that's where the word create comes from. It has the same origin as the word organize. It means organize. But I don't know Hebrew. I don't know the other languages. So I can't accurately verify that. But that makes more sense to me already. If you're enjoying the MiniMoron show, please like the video and subscribe to my YouTube channel, or leave a rating and review on your favorite podcasting platform and share the show with someone. Also, if you really want to support the show and get this thing off the ground, consider signing up for my Patreon, where you can receive early access to episodes, exclusive episodes with my family and close friends, and more exclusive perks. If you're listening to this, you're helping make my dream a reality. So thank you. And because you can't get something out of nothing. See, and then it makes that if God can create, if he can just blip things into existence, if he can just spawn things at the snap of the fingers, that is where that just brings up so many issues within the plan. Let's talk about the creation for one. Why is there a creation process? Why are there 6 creative periods if God can just snap his fingers and bring something into existence? Why did he take 6 individual days to create the world if he could just do it like that? And I know that people will be like, because I don't know, because there's a lesson to be learned there, or because it's poetic in some way, or because, and it's, I'm like, okay, all right, sure. I don't know what that is. But maybe there is. Maybe he did it just for the sake of art. Maybe he did. But that doesn't begin to... Okay, here's the bigger problem. It's the plan of salvation. It's the plan. See, I always tell people, if I wasn't a member of the church, I would probably be be Muslim before I was Christian. Because their doctrine makes more sense to me than mainstream Christianity. Because mainstream Christianity believes that Jesus was the Son of God. And I do not see a point in a limitless being having a son. That's what the Muslims preach. Again, that's according to my knowledge. Is they're like, why Son of God? Why does God need a son? He's God. He can do anything. Bruce R. McConkie, he has but to speak and the thing is done, is what he says about Allah. And I'm like, dude, that makes sense to me. Actually, it doesn't make complete sense because the plan of salvation is still very similar, and that is what doesn't make sense. But why Jesus? If you're limitless, if you're truly limitless, you can do anything. I see no need for Jesus if that's the case. And I'll elaborate on that more, but so you're okay, let's say, okay, here in my hypothetical situation, I'm God, and I'm like, okay, I've got limitless power. Again, I'm on board with the idea that I don't know everything that there is to know. You know, I don't know. There's a lot of things that God does and doesn't do that I don't understand because I'm just stupid little me. But let's say I'm God. I've got limitless power. I create the very framework of the universe. I create, not only do I create the things in the universe, I create the laws that govern it. I create reality. I create existence itself. And so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create man. I'm going to create mankind. And I don't know why. I personally do not know why he would do that. Is he bored? I'm bored. I have limitless power and nobody to rule with it. I have nobody to, I don't know. But I've got limitless power, nobody to share it with, or not to share it with, because I'm not going to share it with anybody, but nobody to rule with it. So I'm going to create mankind. But here's the good news, is that I love mankind. I love, these are my children. I'm going to call them my children. They're not actually going to be my children. See, we understand children to be the offspring. Paul calls us the offspring of God. We're all the children of God, but we're not actually his children because we don't grow up to be gods. We don't progress. We can't progress and become like God. We're not actually his children. We're just like symbolically his children, whatever that means. But he's like, I literally love you as if you were my children. I love you more than that. Like you don't even know. God's love for us is so incomprehensible. We haven't even experienced it. We think that we love someone or something more than humanly possible, and we're not even in the ballpark with how much God loves mankind. Okay, we all agree on that. Okay, so we have limitless power. That's where the contradiction lies. We have limitless power, and we also love mankind. The plan of salvation that is presented to me by mainstream Christianity does not fit that bill. If those two things are true, that plan of salvation cannot look the way that it does. Okay, I'm God. Here's my plan. Okay, I love humankind so much. I want them to experience heaven. I want them to be happy. That's the goal. Okay, God knows what makes people as happy as humanly possible, or inhumanly possible in his case. Okay, he just knows how happy a human can possibly be, whether it be on earth or in heaven. Like, because that's what we want for the people that we love, right? That's what love means, is we truly want them to be happy. And we just we're imperfect and we're mortals and we're stupid. And so we kind of have differing ideas on what actually makes somebody happy, or what happiness even is. What is joy? What is joy really? Is it dopamine? Is it serotonin? Is it what is joy? But God knows, and he wants us to be as happy. He wants us to be as joyful and experience the most joy possible. He wants what's best for us. Isn't that right? Can we not all agree on that? God wants what's best for his children. He wants what's best for his creation. So here's his plan. You tell me if this sounds like a good plan to you. So I'm going to create a mortal experience where, and that's okay, no pre-earth life, no existing, nobody existed before this mortal life. So I can't say that we're going to send people to earth. That's what we believe, that we were, that we all vote. By the way, there's an entire war in heaven led by Michael the Archangel and numberless hosts of heaven that fought against the dragon, this great big, but no pre-earth life. That wasn't us. We have nothing to do with that. It's just a cool story, so we just have it in the Bible. Maybe we do have something to do with it, but I haven't heard anything about it. I would love to know like why that's even in the Bible. If there was no if we didn't exist before, if we weren't there, if we weren't participating in that battle, I'd love to know what its purpose is that we know about it. Because I'm sure that there is, but anyway, we live on Earth. Here's the plan. I'm gonna create an Earth. I'm gonna create this mortal experience. You guys are gonna receive bodies. You're gonna be you, and you're gonna live in mortality. Oh man, dude, it's gonna be great. You're gonna get hurt. You're gonna be sad. You're gonna experience death, separation, heartbreak. Dude, it's gonna be awesome. Okay, but you are there. Okay, no, that's sarcastic. You are gonna have great experiences. You're gonna be married. You're gonna have kids. Most of you will have kids. Some of you won't. You're gonna get to, I don't know, dude. What do people? You're gonna get to play video games. You're gonna get to ride roller coasters. You're gonna get to serve people. Everybody can serve people, and that's an enjoyable experience. You're gonna get to go to church and play music, and you're gonna get to create art, and you're gonna get to experience other people's art, and there's gonna be a lot of good things about mortality that you're gonna enjoy, but for the most part, it's gonna be really freaking hard. By the sweat of your brow, you're gonna eat your bread. You're gonna have to work hard for your provisions. And you're going to experience confusion and you guys, okay, and here's the next part of the plan. All of you are going to experience these things because you're weak. Because you're human beings, and you don't have the capacity to resist temptation and not do stupid things. And you're going to suffer the consequences for it, and it's going to suck. Some of you will be so sad. Some of you will suffer so much that you will feel that this mortality that I've set up for you is not worth it, and you will exit. You will actually end it. That's how tough this life that I'm preparing for you is going to be. That's how much suffering you're gonna experience. And here's the kicker. I'm going to send my son. who is perfect. He will have the spiritual capacity. He'll be the only one that has the capacity to resist all temptation and work out his own salvation and be perfect. But guess what, dude? I'm going to make him suffer more than any of you. I'm going to require him to go through all of the terrible things that every single person goes through. So if you ever feel that you got the short straw and that you're experiencing way more trials and tribulations than the average person, I want it to be crystal clear that you're still not even in the ballpark of what I sent my son to do and what Jesus has been through. I'm going to require him to suffer on a level that is just incomprehensible to you. Okay, that's the plan. And that suffering, that atonement is what's going to enable you to eventually, after this mortality, after this mortal experience, you can be saved. You can be saved. If you don't, see, and that's how you do it, is you just, and that's going to be the difference between eternal joy and everything that I wanted you to have. And dude, guess what the alternative is? And we're like, oh, what? Dad that loves us more than we can even comprehend? What's the alternative? A lake of fire and brimstone. You're going to literally burn in fire forever. That's the alternative. You want to know how you want to know what the people are that are going to experience that? It's the people that just don't accept Jesus. That's all you have to do. That's it. That is what it hinges on. That is what your eternal bliss and eternal hellfire hinges on. Whether you, and we're like, okay, well, what does that even mean? I don't really know. You say the words. You say that you believe in Jesus, or you dream that you do, or you believe in your heart that you do, or you go to church and your pastor says that you do, or I've heard it a gazillion different ways. I feel like that should really freaking be something that we should all be able to agree on, is the mode in which you avoid eternal hellfire and damnation and achieve eternal bliss. I mean, we're talking about forever. What am I going to be doing in the next 400 quadrillion years? I think it's pretty important that we all agree on how we avoid burning for that long. If that's how it is. So and we're like, okay, God who loves us so much, surely it will be so easy to find and easy to understand and easy to do that everybody will do that, right? Like, you're not going to create this mortal experience just to literally, with your foreknowledge, you already know before you even create somebody, before this person even exits the womb or is even conceived. You already know who's going to be conceived, and you already know where they're going to end up. And I don't know who the people are, but you do. God does. He already knows who won't accept Jesus. Why? Why would he allow them to be created? Wouldn't you think a better alternative than burning in a lake of fire and brimstone? Suffering. You're suffering forever. Is that not worse than just not existing at all? I mean, why would you create? Okay, I'm going to create Johnny, who I already know is going to burn forever. Send it anyway. That just doesn't check out for me. No way. So we'll go back to Jesus. Okay, here's an interesting point that I hope people consider very closely. When Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane and he was about to perform the atonement, suffer for the sins of all mankind, he's about to do this. And he says, all things are possible unto thee. He prays to the Father. He prays to God. He prays to the same God that we do. He's not praying to himself. He prays to the Father. He petitions the Father. And he says, all things are possible unto thee. What does that mean? Okay, I believe that omnipotence, having all power, means that he's able to do everything that is possible. God is able to do anything that can be done and everything that can be done. That is what all power means. Limitless? He has no limits on what he can do. Tell me how this scripture makes sense then. All things are possible unto thee. God can do anything. He's limitless. Therefore, let this cup pass from me. Surely there's another way. Surely Jesus says, surely there's another way that we can bring about the salvation of man without me having to do this. Let this cup pass from me. Is there no other way? And what is the Father's answer? There's no other way. You have to do this. Jesus did not want to do that. You know, it's the hardest thing that anybody has ever done, and it's not even close. Would you want to do that? Would you want your son to do that? Would you want if you had limitless power, if you could, because see, do you understand that just that's all I have to know? All I have to know is that God said, he didn't say that, oh, there is other ways. Yes, Jesus, there are other ways to bring about the salvation of mankind. This is just the one I prefer. This is just the one that I want to happen for reasons that are incomprehensible to mankind. There are other ways of accomplishing what we want to accomplish here. There are other ways of bringing about the salvation of man. This is just the way that I want to do it, because there's something to be learned, or I don't know. I mean, he's limitless. But that's not what he said, dude. What he said was, there isn't another way. It has to be this way. Well, who made it that way? What bully, what jerk set it up that way? And the answer that mainstream Christianity has is, well, God did. He created the universe. He created the laws. If you read the scriptures and if you're Jesus and you're like, why is it this way? Why do I have to do this in order to bring, can't you just snap your fingers and save mankind? And God's like, no, that's not how it works. We can't do that. Well, why? Aren't you the one that made it that way in the first place? And mainstream Christianity says, yes, he is. He did make it that way. He invented the laws. He did everything that he created the very framework of the universe. Okay, so I know what everybody's thinking at this point is they're like, well, It's because of free agency. It's because there are exclusive things. Okay, this is just what I've heard. Again, if you're enjoying the MoxieMoron show, please like the video and subscribe to my YouTube channel, or leave a rating and review on your favorite podcasting platform and share the show with someone. Also, if you really want to support the show and get this thing off the ground, consider signing up for my Patreon, where you can receive early access to episodes, exclusive episodes with my family and close friends, and more exclusive perks. If you're listening to this, you're helping make my dream a reality. So thank you. There are exclusive things that a man can achieve only through mortality, only through experience. There are certain things that God was like, look, you have to live on earth. You have to go through this. You have to go through suffering and sorrow so that you can experience exclusive things that are necessary for your salvation. If you want to be saved, you have to go through this process. And it requires you to use your free will. That's the kicker. Free agency, free will. You have to use your free will. That is how the plan is set up. And that's where all of this process comes in, is that if we're going to have free will involved and we're going to provide imperfect people to become perfect, then we have to provide a savior for them. And I'm like, okay, I'm totally on board with that, dude. That's the plan. I 100% agree. We all have free agency, and we're all going to screw it up, and we're all going to come short of the glory of God, and so we need a savior. But why is it that way, dude? Again, I just really feel like people are underestimating what they're saying when they're telling me that God is limitless. I think they're underestimating what they're saying when they tell me that God literally created something from nothing. If he's capable of doing that, then there would be no suffering needed. Why did he make it that way? Okay, great. That's the way it is. He's not going to mess with free agency. And so we have to go through this and suffer through this and that and be redeemed by the atonement. Why? Why would you do it that way? If, again, I can't stress it enough. It's that word, limitless. If you're limitless, if you understand what that word means, then you will also understand that means that he could have just uploaded it all into our brains. He created Adam from dust. Adam wasn't even born from the womb. He literally, if he wanted mankind, and he wanted mankind to live in heaven in a saved state, whatever you believe that is. Okay, we have differing opinions on what heaven is and what that even means, what it looks like, what we're going to be like. But whatever it is, we can all agree that this mortal experience, for whatever reason, is necessary to get there. But if that's the case, God made it that way. He said when he created the universe and he created all the laws, he invented the law that said you have to suffer in order to live in heaven or go to heaven. You have to come to earth. You have to experience sorrow and suffering in order to go to heaven. Or maybe he didn't. Maybe he's like, no, you don't have to, but Adam kind of just screwed everyone over. That's the other popular belief, is like Adam was the villain in this story. You know, we revere Adam. We love Adam, and he was one of the greatest. I mean, he's Michael the Archangel. He's one of the greatest people that ever lived. And I again, this is just according to my knowledge. I could be wrong, but I think that there are a lot of mainstream Christian religions out there that are like, dude, Adam sucks. He partook of the fruit. He screwed us over. We all fell because of what he did. So maybe if that's the case, like maybe if you believe that, then you're like, oh no, God didn't ever require anybody to sorrow or to experience sorrow and suffering. It's just because God doesn't interfere with our agency, and Adam chose to take the fruit. And so now it's just a result of that. And I'm like, dude, why did God do that? Why did God make it that way? Why did God create the plan that says, okay, I'm not going to touch your free will, if he knew that that's what we were going to do with our free will? If I'm limitless, again, if I have I can do anything I want. I'm going to create a plan where there isn't free will. Or there is. No, that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to create a plan where there's free will, but there's no consequences. Why would I do if I want my children to experience, I'm just going to upload complete eternal bliss into their brain. I'm going to create blissful beings from the get-go. I'm not going to send them to earth. I'm just going to I'm going to give them the go directly to heaven card. And just, okay, now we're in heaven. We're all going to live here because I love you. This is what I want for you. I want the best for you. And this is the best. So here we are. No earthly experience needed. No suffering in the Garden of Gethsemane needed. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints contains the only doctrine that has sufficient answers to this paradox and to these issues that I've come across. And I've heard people try so hard to reconcile, to tell me about free will and he doesn't, that seems to be the biggest argument. But that's the thing, is it's not even an argument. They're like, God doesn't mess with free will. There are certain things. In fact, that's what the I've talked to people that are Muslim. That's why not even, while not having a son, while God not having a son makes more sense than having a son, if he's limitless, even the Muslims' plan doesn't make sense, because, like, why are we here? They believe all the same things regarding free agency and experiencing things. We have to learn from our experiences and from our choices, and that's not something that God can just. And I'm like, whoa, dude, did you just say that's not something God can do? Okay, well, you just put a limit on his power. And they're like, okay, well, no, he could, but he just doesn't. And I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't make sense. If he could, then he would, because we're suffering. If he created the plan, if he could create a plan where nobody had to suffer and still achieve the same exact results, I mean, that is within the word limitless. We're saying there is nothing that God can't do. So tell me why he couldn't create a plan where nobody had to suffer, nobody had to experience sorrow, nobody had to experience even 1 second of being sad, and that he couldn't just upload happiness and bliss and heaven and joy with a snap of his fingers. We're all saved instantly. Why can't he do that? Nobody has given me a good answer for that, except for the Church of Jesus Christ. Okay, the answer, the doctrine that we believe is that he has limits. He's limited by the laws of the universe. He exists in reality. Okay, miracles are not magic. Miracles are science that we can't even begin to understand. Miracles exist within the laws of physics. We just don't know those laws right now. We may not understand those laws for another trillion years. Somehow righteousness and godliness is associated with power. That's a science. That's not magic. That's a science that we just don't understand. God did not, he abides by the laws of the universe perfectly. Okay, those passages in the Book of Mormon. It's the only scripture that I know of that gives examples of things that God could hypothetically do, in which case he would cease to be God. That's Cleon Skousen's whole sermon, the meaning of the atonement. That's mostly where this idea comes from. Is like, that's the answer, dude. That's the answer to why there's a Son of God. And if you don't believe that, then there's no good answer. I've come across zero. We would do things so differently. and I don't get it. It's hard for me to understand how so many people just naturally are inclined to believe that. You know, I mean, heaven is great, and I see the joy in praising the Lord and accepting the Lord and being close to him and developing a relationship with him, singing praises and going to church. You know, I get all of that, but it's the burning in hell for everyone else. I mean, really? What kind of plan is that? That plan, any plan that involves people being consigned, not choosing to go to hell, but consigned to hell. Sorry, dude, you're going to hell. That's not a plan from a loving Father. Not a plan from a loving God that has limitless power. He can do anything. He has the power to make it not that way. And yet he keeps it that way. That's his plan. That does not check out for me, dude. That does not check out for me. I need a better answer. You know, I've received answers. I just haven't received any of them that check out. You know, typically it's just kind of a bunch of, I hear people try to explain it, and they just kind of say words like free agency but it doesn't answer the question. At the end of the day, doesn't answer the question. And the only sufficient answer is we don't know. We don't know why he did it that way. He's God. His purposes are higher than ours. And again, I'm all for that doctrine, dude. I'm all for the idea that God knows and does things that we can't begin to comprehend. But there are things that we can comprehend. There are things that have been written. There are things that have been revealed. There are conversations that have taken place between the Son and the Father that we do comprehend. We can comprehend. I will reiterate the fact that if God is telling Jesus, who is about to suffer the worst suffering in the universe of all time, nobody will suffer more. He is about to descend below all things. And when he himself, his most beloved Son, asks his Father, surely if you're God, you can you can make a different way to bring about the same result without me having to go through with this. And God says, no, I can't. This is the way. This is the only way. That automatically implies that God is limited by something. That automatically implies that there is an order to things. And not only is there an order to things, that also shows that order to things may not be what we want to do, or may not be what we want to hear. You know, it's like, Jesus, okay, God's a loving God, plan of salvation, great. We all want to think that the gospel is just full of unicorns and rainbows and that everybody just gets whatever they want because God's merciful. And dude, God sent his son to suffer from and bleed from every pore and then get nailed to a cross. That wasn't just because he wanted that to be done. I mean, like, it had to be that way. That automatically implies that there is an order, that he does have limits, that he abides by the pre-existing laws of the universe, and that his abiding by those laws perfectly is what makes him God. That is what gives him all the power to do all that can be done. There's just a way to do it. There's a process. There's an order to how everything is accomplished. If he was limitless, if he created the universe, there wouldn't be those things. He would just be able to snap his fingers and make whatever he wanted to happen. That is what limitless means. And that's my biggest issue. If this, I can only imagine how much controversy this sparks. So teach me, man. Teach me. Convert me. Nobody wants to be wrong, dude. Nobody wants their beliefs, their religion to be wrong. But again, like, I have not even begun to discuss the things that I have completely rewired my brain on from when I was when I was growing up. But there are a lot of things that haven't been rewired because they just make sense. I'm just looking for the things that check out. I'm looking for the things that make sense. There's been a lot of things that I'm like, upon further review, even though I believed them my whole life, I have come to realize that doesn't make any sense. Or I haven't ever actually received a legit answer to that question. I've for some reason I felt that I have, and people have kind of like mumbled about it, but I haven't received a definitive answer to that question, and that's kind of weird, dude. That's kind of weird. I'm going to go look for one, found one, and now I have made a complete 180 on that doctrine. That being said, there's a lot of doctrines that I have held fast to because I'm like, dude, that does make sense. That does check out. I said this in my last episode. I'll reiterate it again. I'm just looking for the truth at this point, dude. Nobody wants to be wrong. I don't want to be wrong. I care more about not being wrong. I care more about not being deceived than hanging on to my religion for my family's sake or for my friend's sake or for whatever. Like, I don't care about that, dude. I live in St. Louis, Missouri with my wife. We're by ourselves out here, man. We have our church, we have our circle, but when we moved here, we didn't know anybody here. We've got my family. I've got my family back home. I'm not in it for them. I'm not going to church for them. I'm not believing the things that I do for them. I'm looking for what makes sense. I think that's it. Thanks for listening. Thank you for the support. I guess I don't really have many plugs at this point. Still really early in the baby phases of my podcast, but thank you for those that do support me. You guys know who you are, and I appreciate you guys helping me grow and get this off the ground. So really, I think the biggest thing is just sharing the episode. Like, if you felt anything about this, if you felt angry about this and you're like, dude, listen to this goober freaking pop off about a bunch of malarkey, then dude, send that. Share that with people. But yeah, share the show, whether it be digitally, word of mouth. I mean, it's the best way to grow, I guess. So yeah, thank you, and I will catch you guys in the next one.